Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to read what I would say is the most humble bio, which is on this man's website. Grew up poor as a church mouse, failed the 5th grade, barely passed high school, fought in the Vietnam War as a U.S. Marine, graduated University of Baltimore, magna cum laude, CPA, runs 14 businesses that do okay. Our guest is a man who's built not one, but 14 companies and 2 empires, and he's done it his own way. He took a little idea called GoDaddy and turned it into one of the most recognized brands on the internet. Then instead of retiring to a golf course, he decided to build one. And then of course there's PXG, one of the boldest and most talked about brands in golf today. He's a Marine, a billionaire, a philanthropist, and a guy who's never been afraid to stir things up. Please join me in welcoming the one and only Bob Parsons. Here's the happy people. Howdy!
All right, Bob, have the seat.
Oh, we know where this is going. All right. Well, welcome to the NGCOA family, Bob. I can call you Bob, right? It's okay?
Pleasure to be here.
Okay. Everyone's nice receiving a copy of Bob's autobiography, Fire in the Hole. You got it there on your tables. Even though you're getting a copy of the book, I would highly recommend downloading the book and listening to it on your Books app, because Bob reads the book in his own voice. Now, Rock Lucas, I know you got a South Carolina public education, so I know maybe the audio book might be the only option for you, but I know, I gotta do it. But Bob, in that book, you had me honestly laughing about your stories and honestly crying about some of your stories. Anytime you talked about your family, your parents, your children, the emotion was real. And if you've heard Bob talk, he's got a very gruff voice, and so it was kind of hard to tell if it was your gruff voice or your trembling voice when you're talking about, crying and talking about your own family in that book. But I really appreciate how vulnerable you got in that book and telling these real stories. So thank you for doing that. I learned through this book that Bob is a yes man. What I mean by that is, as a kid, working at a gas station, yeah, I'm gonna do that. By the way, there was a robbery and a stick-up at that gas station. That's an amazing story. He testified against the actual criminals as a kid. So you have to listen to this book. Join the Marines? Yeah. Go to college and major in accounting? Yeah. Start your own software company? Yeah. Start your own website, building and domain registry business? Sure. Buy a private golf club? Yeah. Start a golf equipment company? Sure. And then there are some unexpected stories in your book, such as a daunting encounter in high school with a girl named Pauline. Yeah, we're not going to go into that. I'm not going to ruin that. You have to read it. And then later in life, promoting plant-based hallucinogenics or psychedelics as a way to unburden people with mental and emotional problems. It was just a left turn I wasn't expecting. By the way, everybody's got free samples under your chairs. And then we're going to save some Q&A for the end, but why don't we start, Bob, with telling us about growing up in Baltimore and how that kind of shaped your upbringing?
Well, I grew up in Baltimore, East Baltimore, as a matter of fact, and it was a working class neighborhood, which is the best thing I can say about it. So I started my first business there. It was a lemonade stand. I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I decided to make lemonade. It was August in Baltimore. It was one of those days where you can just see the heat just off the asphalt and streets. And so I put sugar and water together, and then there was a bottle called real lemon, and I poured that in there and mixed it up. And no matter how much I put in or what I did, it didn't quite taste right. And then I got the idea, maybe this is how it's supposed to taste. My first customer, his name was Mr. Hill, and back then, insurance people would walk debit routes, because that's the only way in Baltimore you're going to get paid. You got to knock on the door and ask for the weekly life insurance premium. So that's what he does. So he's got his coat slung over his shoulder. He's got a pork pie hat on slung back. He's sweating like a hog. And he sees me, and I got a sign, lemonade, 5 cents. He says, man, do I need one of these. So he gives me a dime, told me to keep the nickel, and he poured him a cup of it, and he throws it down. His eyes bulge. He starts weeping. I thought he was going to pass out. And he spits the lemonade in the street, and he goes, "Kid, that's the worst lemonade I've ever tasted in my life." So anyhow, I gave it to a couple more people, and Suzanne from across the street, my mother says, "You got to give me my money back." And I didn't sell too much more. And my mother, when she came home, she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm selling lemonade, Mom." She says, "How'd you make lemonade?" And I told her, sugar and water and a bottle of lemon juice. She says, "I keep vinegar in that bottle." So she made lemonade the right way for me, and it was tasted pretty good actually. But I couldn't get anybody else to try it.
Your brand was a tarnish at that point.
So that was my first business and utter failure.
Oh, okay. So there's so much to your life here. I know that the next chapter in your life was the most meaningful when you were a young man joining the Marines. So talk to us about what inspired you to join the Marines. Was it happenstance? Was it a plan? How did it happen?
Well, I didn't think it over too much. I mean, I was 17 at the time. I wasn't a good student in school. I was terrible. Failed the 5th grade, and nobody can ever take that away from me. So it looked like I wasn't going to graduate. I discovered alcohol then. There was a senior in high school, alcohol, and the opposite sex. Neither one has ever been known to put a guy on the dean's list. Pretty sure I was going to fail every subject. And I was in gym class when 2 guys come up to me and said, "Hey, Bob," Robert, they called me Robert then. "Robert, what are you going to do after graduate?" I said, "Well, I don't think I will graduate." And they said, "Well, we're going to go talk to the Marine Corps recruiter on Compton Street. You want to go with us?" I said, "Sure, I'll go with you." And so I go with them, and I've never seen such men. This was in 1968, the Tet Offensive, the height of the Vietnam War. 3 of us joined the Marine Corps. I had to get my mother to sign for me, and she said, "Maybe this will be what you need." And so she signed for me. It was very prophetic what she said, because it certainly was. Went back, and the recruiter said, "Well, geez, we're going to be checking your high school grades, and we're pretty selective." Now, keep in mind, this is 1968, the Vietnam War. It took me if I didn't have arms. So I take and go through all the screening tests, and to go back 2 weeks later, and he says to me, I'll never forget, "Robert, we think you'll make a fine Marine." So I was in Vietnam 8 months later, carrying a rifle, and we were a rifle regiment, and our job was to keep the North Vietnamese out of villages that were growing rice and so forth, so they wouldn't terrorize them, and they wouldn't steal their rice to feed the troops and so forth. And to do that, we ran ambushes. And we were pretty successful at what we did. When I first got to my unit, I found out that the guys in my squad, instead of being 12, there was 6, and 4 or 5 of them were killed 3 or 4 days before. And one guy was very seriously wounded. They were, in fact, ambushed. To a man, it was all senior guys. And the guy that was in charge had been there 6 weeks. He was the guy that was calling shots and just turned 19. He's a dear friend of mine to this day. And I remember thinking, nobody knows what to do in here. There's no way I'm going to get through this. And I remember I got really scared while I was waiting to go out on the first night to ambush. And it occurred to me, I'm not going to survive this. I'm going to die here. And when I accepted that, it didn't bother me anymore. See the colors. I just made myself a promise. I made myself I would do the best job I could as a United States Marine, make people back home proud. So that was pretty much it. Oh, and I would do whatever I could to be alive for mail call, because mail call is an important thing. So we'll go out on our first night, and bigger than life, you know, we run into combat. One of the guys loses his arm, loses the side of his head. I mean, it's just gruesome shit in war is. And I got my first kill that night. I shot a snake. And the snake was in a red patty, and it was coming right towards me. But it looked like it was going to bite my off. And when it got close, I put my rifle on automatic and pulled the trigger, and he went to snake heaven. And I had that nasty ass water in my eyes and face, and I get it all out. And I look, everybody else is gone. I'm the only one standing there. They're all underwater. And so I got my first talk that night, and squad leader told me, he said, next time, don't shoot the snake. So there you go.
But you did get the Purple Heart. What happened?
1 month to the day, we were in combat a lot of nights, and this night, the way we would do it is we would be first wait till it got dark, and then we'd move to an ambush site, and then we would be there for about maybe 45 minutes or an hour, and then we'd wait till it got really dark, then we'd move, and then about maybe half a mile, and then we'd wait another half an hour, and then we'd move again, and that'd be our permanent ambush site. And then if anybody would come our way, we'd do a job. And that particular night, we were walking through a village, and I was walking second. I was on the point team. The point man, his name is Bryant. He's a dear friend of mine, also to this day. He stepped over a tripwire, and he missed it. I hit it square on, and it was Chi-Com on the end of it, which is what we called those Vietnamese hand grenade. That thing went off, and it blew my pants off. It not off like this legs. It caught shrapnel on my arms, and so I was pretty screwed up. And then I was medevac back to Air Force Hospital in Japan until I recovered. That's how I got wounded.
Man, yeah, we could talk about the military service probably for this entire hour, but I know it was a seminal chapter in your life that when you look back in retrospect and your success in business, what was it about the Marines that really changed you to become what you were able to do?
Well, the Marine Corps changed me in every way. You know, the Marine Corps is different from the other armed forces, and not that it's any better, it's just different. And for example, during that tour in the Army, Navy, and Air Force, 12 months. Marine Corps, 13 months. If you're wounded in any of the other armed forces, you're out of combat. Marine Corps is wounded 3 times. Now, in all fairness to the Marine Corps, very easy to be wounded 3 times with those guys. That's just the way it is. When I came home, I went to college, and when I went to college, I studied accounting, and to everyone...
Tell how you chose accounting, please.
Yeah,
I think I want them to know, yeah.
Okay, well, the way I chose accounting was, it wasn't real analytical. I opened the course book up, that's got all the different things you can major in, and the first one in the book was accounting. And I said, what's that? And he says, you go with math? And I said, yeah, I think so. I was good as anything. And he says, you interested in business? And I said, yeah. He said, you might want to study accounting. So I did. If I opened it backwards, I'd have been a zoologist. But it was a very fortuitous choice because I loved it. And there you go. And what the Marine Corps did for me, taught me the importance of responsibility, that is sacred. And they taught me that the importance of discipline, that you didn't have to like something to do it, you didn't have to want to do it. But, you know, if you had the responsibility, you had to do it, so you did it, keep your out done, right? And they taught me that, you know, I could do and accomplish far more than I believed I could. And they taught me that I had a right to be proud. And all those things together made the biggest difference in me. I come back, I was a different guy, as opposed to the aimless kid that went in. But I was also changed in ways that were not so good. I had PTSD beat the band, where PTSD actually in some ways helped me. You know, PTSD, everybody that I know that it was in combat had PTSD, and they self-treated in some ways. You know, it was either drugs, alcohol, you know, some have friends that live up in the mountains and never come out. And then with me, I buried myself in my work. It helped me up quite a bit. And then isolation. And the reason I liked accounting so much is I don't deal with people. Yeah.
I mean, to go from barely finishing high school to magna cum laude with a CPA degree, I mean, let's give this guy a hand. I mean, that's very
I am.
Yes, he did. Well, let's now move into the next chapter, because most people know you for GoDaddy fame. They don't know that you had a pretty darn successful business before that. Talk about how you went from accounting into having a pretty darn successful software business.
When I was working in accounting, I had an opportunity. That's when the first microcomputers became available. Radio Shack, TRS-80, and on. And this was about 1975 or so, and then I got an Apple computer, and it became my love. I'd write the code before I would buy anything. So if I wanted the computer to do anything, I wrote the code. And I got to be really, really good at it. And then I wrote a home money management program that I eventually called Money Counts. I remember I started a business in my basement, and I worked a real job. I was running a leasing company for somebody else, and then I was running this software business for myself. And then the first year, I priced it, I think, at $99. I didn't know how to sell it. I didn't know my from a hole in the ground. And but I decided to do it. Barely sold any. Next year, I kept, improving the software, dropped it to $69, $49, lost everything I had, second year running. Wife was, surprised me, she wouldn't walk with it. I mean, I would take it and spend a couple $1,000 on an ad and get no calls. I'd be running, anybody call? Nobody called. Then one day, I had somebody call me, sitting back, I'm broke, and they have at Fort Dodge, Iowa, this thing called the computer bargain liner, a real rag, right? So it had a glossy cover and a glossy back, and the inside was all newsprint with just ads. And so I took in, they said, we have the outside front cover for $5,000, we can sell you. It's usually $15,000. They said, are you interested? Now, the one thing I always did is I always pay my bills. I think the Marine Corps taught me that. I bought the ad. I didn't have any money, but I just had a hunch. And so I created an ad, and it said, money counts, but it only costs, and I dropped it to $12. You hear people say, well, it doesn't cost enough, nobody will buy it. That's bullshit. All right. I take it and run this ad, and then, after it's out a week, nothing, I'm used to that. And then all of a sudden a couple of ads, and you see these commercials where there's advertising, direct marketing, they show them a mailbox stuffed with envelopes. Well, that's the way mine looked. Holy shit! Right? And so I took in, mailman was eventually putting box down for all the letters, and then that he couldn't fit in the mailbox. So I think I made $15,000 on that end.
Wow.
And then I started calling the other computer magazines, Compute, PC World, and some of them are no longer around. But anybody that would give me credit, I bought and put that ad in. And I remember the first year, I made $250,000. I never made that kind of money in my life. I didn't know what it was like to have that kind of money. But I had it, baby.
So how did it grow to be, what happened to that company?
So I quit my real job with the leasing company. They begged me to stay, and I said no, kept going, and found out how to market and raised the prices. Then I remember telling my wife that one day we'll sell 100 copies. One day I sold 22,000 copies of it. And I also was able to ship them all the next day because I bought something to do that. I sold that company for not a lot of money, for $64 million. My wife and I decided we would sell it for $48 million. The company that offered us was into it. They offered us $60 million. And I told them I knew enough, told them I was insulted. And I got $64 million for it. For a year or so, I couldn't work. I had the agreement not to compete. Got divorced. She didn't want to be married anymore. No, it's no fun being married to somebody who's got PTSD. So she was a good wife. She was wonderful. She put a boot in my. She sent me walking. I went on my business, and I moved to Arizona, where I started a company called GoDaddy. And I started that from scratch.
Wow. So back when you started GoDaddy, when you first had to explain to people kind of what a domain name was, did it look at you like you had three heads? How did you go from nothing at GoDaddy to success?
I knew I wanted to be involved in the internet. And back then the internet was just cooking, just getting ready. I hired some people, and the idea was we would do whatever we could to make money, and what worked, we keep doing. What didn't work, we quit doing. To do business that way is a very quick and easy way to lose all your money. Because my wife got half the money, more than half actually. I had a total of $36 million. I started with $36 million. I said, I won't worry about this company until I have $30 million. I got right to $30 million. Wouldn't worry until I have $25 million, $25 million, $20 million, $20 million, 15, 15. And then I got down to $6 million. A couple of years before that, we decided to do domain names. And the only thing that we found that would give us any traction, we make any money, is build websites for people. But the problem with building websites is you couldn't make money doing it, significant money, because you were limited to the websites you could build. So we got the idea, and when I say we, I mean me, got the idea that we would build software that people would buy, and they would build websites and pay us for the websites. They do the work. All right, so I did that, and then every one of those websites needed a domain name, and the domain name companies were rude to me as you can't imagine. So I went ahead and started my own domain name company, and eventually called it GoDaddy. What happened was, I got down to where I had $6 million, and I decided I shut the company down because I couldn't even see the red light. And that was in 2000, 2001, 2002. When I started the company, I went to Hawaii to decide what I was going to do with the money, how I was going to pay the employees, how I was going to pay my bills, how I was going to sell what assets I had. The turnaround happened for me when I went to get my car from the valet, and the valet guy was the happiest guy I ever seen in my life. he was throwing his keys in the air. Mr. Parsons, how you doing, buddy? You know, can I get your car for you and so forth? And you know, this guy could have, this guy in the world probably had nothing. But I thought, you know, I got $6 million. This guy has nothing, and he is happy as hell. I have $6 million and I'm miserable. What's wrong with his poster? And I'm saying, you know what? I'm going to go back, just keep the company going. And if it turns around, fine, it turns around. If not, I'll park cars. Actually, I decided I'd go to Vegas and be a sick man on a craps table. I like doing that. But anyhow, I wish I could tell you I did things different. This was in January, February. In October, the thing happened that made GoDaddy. It was the dot-com crash. And that's how I did better than all the other companies. I survived the dot-com crash. Domain names that I was selling for $12 and $8 and so forth. And I had good service when the other companies didn't. Then all of a sudden I was noticed because they were all gone. Every week there'd be a company that I would be doing business with that would just vanish. And I mean, when I say vanish, I mean vanish. They were gone, baby. You know, I'd send them a check for what I owed them. The check would come back to no such person at this address. Just rip that baby up and then to the next thing.
What I love, Bob, is these two moments in your life when you're in Vietnam and you realize, I'm going to die here. Like this seminal moment of clarity, and that changed everything from that point forward. And here you are in Hawaii, this guy, he said in the book, he must be in his 50s, he's happy, he's on it. And then you had this epiphany that, screw it, you know, I'm willing to lose it all to be happy. And that changed everything. I think there's a serious lesson there for all of us in this room.
Well, you know, the Chinese have a saying that says that success is often found just before you're about to quit, or see they don't want to brink of failure, either one.
Wow. Well, so you sold GoDaddy at some point, right? So you grew up to what size? And do you mind sharing?
I grew it to over 5,000 people. We were doing business in every country that was legal for us to do business in. I got a lot of offers for it. I mean, I had offers. First one was 100 million. I didn't even consider that. Another one was for 500 million. I didn't do that. And friends that I had in Germany, one and one, they offered me 900 million, let's say. I sold it for $2.3 billion. And
can we give him a hand for that one?
and I kept 29% of it. 11 years later, I sold that 29% for another $2.5 billion.
Wow, smart guy. Oh my gosh. Now, you were pretty well known in the GoDaddy years for your advertising, right? The Super Bowl ads. Yes. Fast forward to 2025. If you were running GoDaddy, say, what kind of ad would you run on the Super Bowl today?
Oh, if I was doing GoDaddy, it'd be the same kind of ad.
Yeah.
Only a little saucier.
A little saucy.
You know, see, the deal was, I was selling domain names, which was the product that everybody else, all the other domain name companies were selling. The only difference was they were selling hosting first, a place to do your website. I was selling the domain name first, and then I would sell hosting. Because I learned early on that when somebody wants to start a business, they do the domain name first, then they do hosting. These idiots never did figure that out. Only the whole time I owned GoDaddy, which was 12, 15 years, something like that, I took and went to one trade show, and it was at Microsoft, and it was literally how to compete with GoDaddy. Now, when I sold GoDaddy, I had a 75% market share, right? You think these idiots would copy what I was doing? No. So anyhow, I went to this thing, and I remember saying to my chief of staff as we walked out, we don't have a thing to worry about.
By the way, before we went on stage, I told Bob, I said, this isn't the USGA, it's the NGCOA. You can speak freely.
He said, you can say whatever you want. I said, good, I'm from East Baltimore. I speak French.
Oh my gosh. So you sold GoDaddy, and then again, like I said, instead of retiring, you decided to get into the golf business. Right? That's the business we're in here. So why? Why did you start PXG?
Well, here's the deal. Now, I decided I had $2.3 billion, and I wasn't married then, and didn't have any partners. I mean, what am I going to do? I figured maybe I could buy a football team. I never actually looked at a football team, but I thought about it a lot. Or I'd get a golf course. And golf course right around the corner from me. I just happened to one day, a buddy of mine said, come over to the place is for sale. And it was called the Golf Club Scottsdale. I went over there, and this place was lovely. It was surrounded by 3.5 million acres, government land. It had its own water. Needed some work. It was like a beautiful woman with some bad teeth. So I bought it for $600,000. All right. So, and then I hired some guys to fix the teeth. Right. And then I bought the land surrounding it, and it is now over 700 acres. I put $325 million into it. And if anybody ever tells you you can't do much with $325 million, you just don't have to give you $325 million and you can show them.
That's Scottsdale National, right?
That's Scottsdale National, baby.
It's got 2 18-hole courses and 9-hole, right?
Yeah, it's 45 holes. We have 151 members. We're the only golf course that I know of that in the Scottsdale area that doesn't oversee. We use 328 Bermuda, and we save a ton on water. Nobody looks at it can tell we don't oversee, because I found the trick. And you know what the trick is? Is when it gets cold in Arizona, and I've been telling everybody this anyhow all the time. Nobody do it. And it starts turning light. You dye it green, just like the grass. And the dark green draws the heat from the sun, and it keeps it growing.
Ah, very clever.
Imagine that, huh? Right?
Don't you think Bob needs to be a member of NGCOA?
Well, that should be an account.
How did that lead to PXG?
Huh?
How did that lead to PXG?
Well, I was on the driving range one day, and a teaching pro named Gabe Yerstedt said to me, he said, Bob, these guys will do anything to improve the game. So-and-so, Mike Nicolette, was paying, I think he's up for a change. Yeah, I bet you can hire him to start a golf club company. So I talked to Mike, and I had to know Mike. And so we talked, and he says, I spent over $300,000 a year on golf clubs myself, because I'm a lazy guy in some ways. What I always try to do is do the easiest thing. So, I always would try to buy equipment that made big promises, see if it would get me where it said it would, and it never did. I had my assistant, Francisca, here, start pulling the invoices, and she quit at $300,000. She said, Bob, just says a lot on it. She was in the Marine Corps too. Even offered her to her. I said to Mike, how come clubs don't get better? He said, well, Bob, we got deadlines we got to meet. We got price points we got to meet. We're going to spend so much money on and on and on and on. You know, that's a crybaby song, right? So I said to him, Mike, suppose you didn't have all those things. Suppose you could spend as much money as you wanted to. You could take as long as you needed to, and you didn't. You know, we sell for whatever we needed to. And he says, oh, man, I'd sure like to try. And he says, but, you know, I can never leave these people. He left me, and I told my radio guy, Steve, I said, Steve, I'll hear from him in 3 months. Heard from him in a month, and he said, I have 2 more guys that want to come with me. and he says, we want to know, how long do we have to develop this? I said, you got 100 years. I was serious. And, you know, I didn't know if we'd do it or we didn't do it, but you know, they had 1 year where they couldn't do it. And then the other years they get to work, and then they did it in a year. And then we did PXG's first hollow cavity with the right kind of polyurethane insert with the right weights on it. No club looks like a PXG, and no club performs like it. Right now we're on our 8th edition, Gen 8s, and brother, sisters, these things are like, you hit them, you want them. And the same thing for the drivers in the long clubs. Nobody makes clubs like we do. And our slogan is you've never played like this before. Yeah, baby.
You know, you've seen golfers spend thousands of dollars trying to buy a better swing. So what's that taught you about human nature? And people are willing to spend that kind of money on golf.
He was right.
Now, why did you enter the market and not work with distributors? It was direct sales only, right? Is it to buy PXG clubs, you had to contact PXG. Why did you decide that model and not really go along with how golf?
You know, I did that, and I did the high price model. First I did the high price model. I did things completely different from everybody. And it worked, and we got notice from everybody. You know, a guy told me once, he said, you know, if you're at a bar and you want to draw a woman's attention, you drink beer. I always told him, I said, that's how much. I was at a bar. I started laughing so hard I had wine from out my nose. And he says, I said, no woman paid attention to me. And he says, see, I told you. It's a different business.
So, but I did notice a press release the other day that said PXG's coming to the PGA show for the first time. So you guys are going to be in Orlando the show?
We are going to the PGA show for the very first time, and we're going to market to clubs with the very first program for golf courses from us. And we think it's pretty good.
No, it's good. It'd be great to see you guys there. What's your perspective on the golf industry now, the game, how it's changed a little bit? You know, you got the tours divided. You've got what's happening, you know, on the big stage. You've got millions more people playing the game. The divide is changing in golf. So
I think it needs to grow a lot more. And one of the reasons why it doesn't grow, it needs to be a lot more fun. One of the things I like about it, as Guys International, is I get to make the rules. like some of the local rules are, if every club in your bag is a PXG, you don't have no 14 club limit. As a matter of fact, you guys just spend any club right there you want to buy. You know, I always remind myself, the reason golf is so punishing is because the Scotch invented it. Scotch invented it. Those sadistic you know, if your ball's in a divot in the fairway, it's grand under repair. Move it to the side. You know, you don't have to hit it out of a divot. What's wrong with these people, right? We rake the bunkers for you, right? We hire some people, and you know, I haven't seen any automatic bunker rakers.
yeah.
You know, if you have them, I'll buy them. Matter of fact, I'll buy 3 of them. But anyhow, it just needs to be more fun.
Yeah. No, I think the vibe is changing towards that. I definitely see it. I'll ask a couple more questions, and if you have any questions from the audience, please get ready. You know, you've called yourself a serial entrepreneur. So how many businesses do you think you'll start before someone says, hey, Bob, maybe you should just take up pickleball instead?
I don't know. I just looked at another business to buy, which is rare. I usually just start from scratch, and I decided not to. But I don't know. I mean, I have 14 of them now, and that counts as the foundation where we give to charity $1 million every other week. I believe that's important. I give the Marine Corps. And the military guys and gals that are hurt in the military, give them they're the largest donations we make. And I don't know. I just do it for fun.
Yeah.
I never did it to work. I just do it to have fun. I'm married to my third wife now. My first two wives gave me walking papers. They were wonderful women, both of them. They were just wonderful women. But I was a little too much for them. And so they sent me packing. My third wife, she got me treated for PTSD and completely changed me. And before that, it had been difficult for me to be up here and talk to you guys and so forth. I had to talk to you from behind the curtain. But anyhow.
Yes, and he's also one of these billionaires of like 200 or so that signed the pledge to give away half of their worth to charity. Talking about generous, right? And he gives, I think it's $26 million a year, every single year to charity. This guy. What's something you hope people will say about you 50 years from now, and maybe something you hope that they don't?
I don't think anybody's going to be saying anything about me 50 years from now because, I haven't done anything remarkable and anything like that. And what to do, I don't give a what they say.
That's the answer I was looking for. Oh, the best. Oh my gosh. All right, well, let me rephrase. You've given away hundreds of millions through your foundation. What kind of impact do you want that to have long after you're gone?
At least help some people, put a smile on their face, help them get to some place where they wouldn't otherwise. And maybe it'll do for them what the Marine Corps did for me. And the Marine Corps did that for me. I mean, I didn't do it. They did it. But I used it. Yeah.
Well, that's great. All right, who's got some questions for Bob? Raise your hand.
I'll answer any question you ask me.
You know that.
You ask me anything.
How'd you come up with the name GoDaddy?
All right, okay. And me and I first called the business Joe Max Technologies, which is a very forgettable and stupid name. And it's this dirt road I used to pass going to work. Now, in all fairness to us, the company wasn't doing anything. I would send people to business meeting, all the local businesses to get together, and they'd go and they'd get their cards, and people would ask them, well, what do you guys do? And they said, well, we don't know yet. And they say, I've never met a business that doesn't know what they do. So me and a lady that went through 3 businesses with me, she and I stayed up like 3 nights in a row. I mean, not stayed up, didn't work till about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And then we came up with the GoDaddy name, and we bought it as a joke. We said, Fat Daddy, taken. Big Daddy, taken. And then I remembered America Online, the Go command, and then we put that with GoDaddy, with Daddy, and it was available. So we bought it, told everybody the next day that we're going to call the company GoDaddy. And they're going, oh man, that is a terrible name. And the stuff, that's where the name came from. And by the way, that person has just retired, and she left with, when she and I started working together, she didn't have anything. And she now has over 200 million.
Wow. Go Daddy. Other questions for Bob? Back here, Whitey.
Do you have any children, and if not, would you adopt me?
Do you have any children? And if not, would you adopt him?
You allowed to go, mommy?
Why are you taking this time with the answer?
No.
Over here. Kathy?
Were there any opportunities that floated your way that you didn't take advantage of or didn't jump on that now you look back and wish you would have?
No, none. Absolutely none. And anything I felt like I wanted to do, I did. So far, I've never failed at one of them. The reason I don't fail is because it kind of helps me be a billionaire. I keep changing, doing stuff different, And eventually, it looks like I'm smart because I find a way to do it.
How do you break through barriers when you're up against institutions that have long histories of operating one way?
Okay, I don't operate one way. I mean, I operate one way in the sense that, I have a couple rules that I stand by. By the way, Scottsdale National has essentially no rules. And because people don't like rules. So we only have one rule, and because they're there for a good time, no member shall interfere with another member's good time. That's it.
That's a good one.
Everybody loves that rule. Things that I do the same always is I always start by myself. No partners is a rule of mine because I'm too eccentric. I do things so different, right? That no partner would stay in business and hang in there with me. So that's the one thing. So, but other than that, I do things differently. Now, if something goes wrong, it's my fault. It always is my fault. All right. And you know what? And the people that work for me are not afraid to make mistakes, and Lord knows they up. Now this girl that left with 200 million should probably cost me $1 billion. Right? But she also helped me make that couple billion. And so, that's just the way it goes. I mean, you got to swing the bat or you don't hit the ball.
Boy, to not have fear of failure, that changes everything. That does. Well, Bob, your story is a master class in grit and reinvention and doing things your own way. From the Marines to GoDaddy to PXG, you've shown what's possible when you combine fearless ideas with relentless work. So thank you for sharing your journey with us and your humor, but I have a token of appreciation. There's a story in your book. That I'm going to share a story. I'm hoping you guys will read this. There's a story when he was a child. He was about 10 or 11, and this was when he said he grew up as poor as a church mouse. It's true. And when you were about 10 or 11, you tell a story about the corner store where it was around October, November, and the Christmas toys all of a sudden start showing up on the shelves, on the top shelf, And there was one toy. It was this ship called the Fighting Lady, like you said, and you really wanted it. And cut the story short a little bit, it was a disappointing Christmas. You didn't get that. And you say in the book, I could have 10,000 of these if I wanted now, right? Well, as a token of my gratitude for you being here today, we got you the original Fighting Lady, 1961, the battleship here.
Oh, baby! I'm gonna go home and see if my wife will get in the tub with me.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more time for Bob Parsons.